Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2025 Houston Open DFS Tactics Show. We have a lot to cover. The forecast, my rankings, and the projected ownerships for the slate this week down in Houston. As you can see, the fandom is still on full display, will be on full display until the end of March Madness, hopefully, because that means they won, or until they get knocked out. So feel free to throw your fandom into chat, have some friendly banter with that. But we are here for the Houston Open, so let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. There are a lot of great golf analytic tools out there. There's no doubt about that. I simply believe Fantasy National is the best. Go check out fantasynational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I place research out there every Monday regarding the tournament of the week, some course info, patterns of previous winners, things of that nature. Didn't do anything for the Houston Open since it has not been seen in this part of the schedule except for last year, so only 1 year of data to go on for me. But if you want to see you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show, so that'll be out later this evening. If you want to see the players I'm using most often in my lineups, where I've put my money in wagers this week, give me a follow over at X if you want to see that. Then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. Our weekly write-ups are over on his social media page as well. That came out about an hour and a half ago. Our detailed descriptions and write-ups for the picks that we have. Of course, we'll cover that at the end of the show this evening. But if you want to see our thought process in more detail, make sure you're giving him a follow over on social media and subscribe to that article that I mentioned. It is free to do. You really are missing out if you aren't subscribed to that article. And then lastly, we are live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all. I do have a poll question typed up, so I'll put that out there when we finish this intro. Who is your winner? Who are you targeting? Who are you staying away from? And of course, any lineup questions that you have this week, feel free to put that in chat. I will get to as many questions as possible. I apologize in advance if I don't get to them all, but I will get to as many as possible. So let's get into it. Let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2025 Houston Open. And we are going to start, as we always do, on a Wednesday evening with the super forecast over at Windfinder. The camera was behaving. Don't know if it's going to do that. It looks like it's starting to freeze, so I'll just have to turn that off. So apologies for that. Let me put the poll question up. And I need to zoom out here on Windfinder. Let's see. There we go. Poll question for the week. And full disclosure, I kind of took this from another pundit or show that I listen to myself. Who is the best player in the world right now? Not necessarily who's number one in the OWGR. In your opinion, who is the best player in the world right now? Is it Scotty? Is it Rory? If it's somebody else, put it in chat. Would love to hear your all's thoughts on who the best player in the world is at the moment. Looking at the forecast for Houston, you can see that it starts off pretty calm tomorrow morning, and the gusty winds really pick up, and it looks like there is still a good possibility for rain, although the amount has certainly dropped from earlier in the week. Now Friday looks pretty rough in terms of wind. Low sustained winds, but gusts, into the mid-20s. Late afternoon, early evening, looks like the gusts could get into the 30s with some increased sustained winds. Also some rain in the forecast as well. If we take a look at the full picture, it says that there's going to be more rain than what is in the super forecast for Thursday and Friday. Now, the weekend looks pretty solid. Still a little windy, but no rain. This is all contingent on how much rain is really dropped on Memorial Park Thursday and Friday, but there's a decent chance that we're looking at ball in hand, at least based on this forecast. I don't know if there would be delays per se, but definitely ball in hand. So I tried to have a little bit of a mind of that when making the mixed condition model. If you're asking me about wave advantages or whatnot, much like last week, I'm not going to play a wave advantage. You could argue that the Thursday AM, Friday PM has the best half of the draw because they get the lowest amount of wind for their portion. But again, like I said last week, I wasn't scared. I was going to play some of the PM AM guys, and it worked out to my favor. Corey Connors, Victor Hovland, the winner. I didn't play him, but Victor Hovland came from the supposed bad wave. So I'm not going to play a wave advantage. If you are a big believer in this, I would not blame you if you wanted to give the Thursday AM, Friday PM, a little bit of a boost in your considerations. I'm not going to do that because we just saw it last week that it doesn't always come to fruition. So there's a look at the forecast for Memorial Park and the Houston Open this week. We'll move to Fantasy National, and I will add a couple of years here just to make it statistically significant. But it looks like that the players are going to be dealing with moderate and windy conditions throughout the entirety of the tournament. Maybe a little bit of a reprieve on Saturday. So with that, your top players in the past couple of years are in moderate and windy conditions: Scotty, Wyndham Clark, Rory, Ricky Fowler, Sahith Theegala, Harry Hall, Sung Jae, Andrew Novak, Adam Schenk, and Patrick Rogers. We have a lot to cover, and we're doing a little bit of a review there for the wind. We could review difficult. We could review long courses. We just have a lot to cover, so let's just jump straight into it. The mixed condition model that I have made for Houston this week is a behemoth. And I mentioned this for the Farmers, the Genesis at Torrey Pines. That mixed condition model was a behemoth as well. 14 different metrics went into this mixed condition model. I generally have bigger, more robust models when the course, or I think the course is going to play difficult that week. It's generally how it goes. And I think Memorial Park's going to be pretty difficult this week. So we're going to start with 5% off the tee on long courses. You could argue to look at off the tee when it's difficult, but driver is in these players' hands majority of the time around Memorial Park. So because of that, I wanted to see who generally does well on long courses, particularly off the tee. Yes, distance is going to matter, and you see that I have 5% there, which we'll cover here in a moment. But I don't want to ignore the accuracy off the tee either, because I think there is a decent chance that there is ball in hand. So we have 5% off the tee on long courses. I would have loved to have, added a little bit more weight. But as I mentioned, this is a pretty robust, pretty big model. I wanted to make sure I had a lot of things in there. I only had room for 5% off the tee. 10% approach. I was flip-flopping back and forth between approach and around the green. You see 15% around the green. I went back and forth with myself. I ended up thinking that around the green was going to be more of a factor this week than approach. So if you disagree, then, when we get to the rankings, give players with high approach numbers a little bit more of a boost. Hey, good evening, Rose. Good evening, P. Thanks for jumping in chat, both of you. Very much appreciated. Hopefully we're ready for the Houston Open. I'll be interested to hear your take, Rose, when we get to lineup building and all that, and see if you disagree with my assessment on whether I'm getting unique enough, considering what was it the players that you and I went back and forth on. I think it was around Hideki lineups and stuff like that. So I'll be interested to hear your take on that. We'll definitely be covering that later in the show. But good evening to you, and good evening, P. Hopefully things are well in your world. I will be slightly mentioning one of your Chicagoans or your Illinois guys, so stay tuned for that. But it's good to see you as always, P. So yeah, as I was mentioning, I was going back and forth between approach and around the green. I don't think you can go wrong which one you want to weight more, but historically, Memorial Park has really emphasized around the green, especially in relation to other courses. There's been a lot of talk this week how around the green is just very difficult around Memorial Park. So I wanted to really emphasize that. So this might be a bit heavy here, might be a little bit light here, whichever you prefer. Luke Donald must be in the field. Not quite. Not quite Luke Donald. Uncle Luke. Nope. So anyway, there's that. And then 5% on Poa Trivialis putting. That's this multiple courses, multiple seasons. 5% putting on Poa Trivialis. I didn't want to overrate this, even though Memorial Park really emphasizes putting. I've got a little bit of some hidden putting elsewhere in the model. So I didn't want to overrate players like Sam Ryder, who I'm not really high on this week, even though he's the number one putter on Poa Trivialis, just giving the most extreme example. So 5% putting on Poa Trivialis, 5% distance. Look, especially if the course is going to be soft with some of this rain that's in the area this week, carry distance is just a big deal. It really will be this week. Not to mention, the accuracy portion of the off the tee to have ball in hand, which I think could come up. 5% distance. You look at the winners here: Stefan Jaeger, Tony Finau, even Jason Kokrak before he went to live. These guys could move it off the tee. Now Carlos Ortiz, a little bit of a different story. He wasn't short by any means. He wasn't a bomber, but the past three winners have been able to move it off the tee. So distance will be a bit of a factor. However, the biggest factor I wanted to look at, particularly with off the tee, was good drives. I wanted to see guys that hit it long enough while staying in the fairway, or they absolutely mash it off the tee and their irons are good enough to still find the greens. And you'll notice that I have the filter long courses. This is also incorporating some 200 plus procs, or the estimated 200 plus procs. That's why that's only at 5%, because I have a little bit of long iron proficiency in this metric here, metric and filter combination. So 10% good drives on long courses. As I mentioned Monday, I was gonna probably repeat this from the Valspar, and I'm doing it again. 5% birdies when rounds are difficult, 10% bogey avoidance when rounds are difficult. Obviously, the bigger thing is bogey avoidance, because pars are generally good scores around Memorial Park. If a player is able to avoid a bogey, they're going to be gaining shots on the field. But it's not like even par is going to win. Guys are going to have to make a few birdies to contend to win this week. You've seen some of the winning scores. I think Finau is an outlier at 16, but Jaeger last year at 12. Jason Kokrak, I believe, was 11 or 10 under. So you're going to have to make some birdies to contend this week. So I wanted to see players who could make some birdies while it's still difficult, but mainly bogey avoidance. 5% total procs. This is a little bit of a gut feeling for me. I got this mainly from Monday night and the Data Dive show, how total procs was, close to 20% more important than the average full field course. These greens are pretty large, 7,000 square feet on average. So hitting the green might not be enough. So I did want to see some, or at least some proximity numbers. 200 plus procs at 5% due to the length of the course, players attacking some of these par 5s, and the bevy of long par 4s that are here. 200 plus procs is going to be a pretty big factor. 10% in par 3s, you have 5 par 3s around Memorial Park. You will have to play these well to contend. But there was no real range that was the most important. They are pretty evenly split, at least on the scorecard. Here at Houston, you got two, 150 to 175, and then one of each mid, long, and very long. So I didn't want to focus on just a range. Guys are just going to have to play par 3s in general very well. So 10% there, 5% in this specific length of par 4. This was, 70 to 80% of the strokes gained in par 4s come from this range. So that's what that equated to. 5% in par 5s, 550 to 600, 90% of strokes gained fell in this range category. And then as I alluded to finalize the mixed condition model, I have 3-putt avoidance. 5% in 3-putt avoidance. Because these greens are large, it's not going to be just enough to hit the greens. These greens can be pretty tricky. Admittedly, this is gathering from other sources and people that I listen to throughout the week. They think 3-putt avoidance is going to be pretty important. You think about these winners and players that do well, like Scotty, not necessarily a good putter. Tony Finau, not necessarily a good putter. Kokrak was never a good putter. But what they were really good lag putters. Very good at 3-putt avoidance. So 5% in 3-putt avoidance. I did end up using 2024 just to make it statistically significant in terms of number of rounds. There's a look at the mixed condition model that I have made for the week at Memorial Park. Hopefully I've covered ways that I might be weak or things that I might have weighted too much, like around the green. If a different proximity length matters than 200 plus, with driver in all of these players' hands, maybe it's 175 to 200 that matters. Okay. But otherwise, I feel pretty good with this model. You could maybe argue to add some off the tee, but as I mentioned, with how big and robust this mixed condition model is, and I wanted to factor in all of these different metrics, I only had room for 5%. So let's look at the model. We'll go to Microsoft Excel, the reveal of my rankings. And for your information, if you're a new viewer, as a reminder for returning viewers, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The FNGC rank, which is a straight numerical ranking based on the mixed condition model that we just talked about and covered, all the metrics and percentages and filters. Fantasy National will spit out a ranking. Course value is a way to give a player a numerical value based on how well they have played that course. Normally, I say the last 5 years. This is, in Memorial Park's case, is only 4 years because it was not seen in the calendar year 2023. So it's really only last 4. And then we are playing DFS, projected ownerships. We're trying to find unique options off of our fellow contestants. So projected ownerships, and these are from Gabe, and what I've talked about in the past month or so, how he has started calculating ownerships, and he's done pretty good job. Yes, there will always be the 1 or 2 players that he misses, but he's done a pretty good job with in our checks after a contest lock. So projected ownership is also a factor in my rankings. Crazy, this course only costs 100 to play as a non-resident. Cart path only currently. That could be a couple of different reasons, P. I mean, obviously, with the weather, the rain, that might be it. They also might keep it cart path only because they knew that the Houston Open was coming up soon, and they didn't want to mess with the turf or the grass and rough and all that. I wouldn't read too much into that in terms of, it's drenched with rain. I wouldn't do too much into that. But there is certainly rain in the forecast there Thursday and Friday. Okay, my rankings for this week go as such. Tony Finau is my number one player. He's getting helped really by the fact that he has played so very well here at Memorial Park, winner in 2022. I don't think I would put him number one, but I can understand why. You see Fantasy National rated him 5th, so not really overall number one. He's also quite unique off of Scotty and Rory. Scotty number 2, Jacob Bridgman 3rd, JJ Spawn and Siwoo Kim round out my top 5. Michael Kim, Stefan Jaeger, Ben Griffin, Sung Jae, and Sam Ryder round out my top 10. Not really a whole lot of surprise here other than maybe Sam Ryder, and I've talked about him a lot this week. I'm just not very high on him. I know I've mentioned him, for 2 straight weeks. The Players, Valspar, it's really worked out. I am not on Sam Ryder this week, despite him being 10th in my rankings. You see his course value is pretty darn high. He does not generally fare well around Memorial Park. He's also getting helped by the fact that he's so unique. Number 1 on par 3s so far this year. Number 1 putter on Poetry Trivialis, sure, but he's got a few warts in the game. Mainly this off the tee, especially on long courses, does not favor him. Otherwise, not really a whole lot to talk about in the top 10. You can always argue the order of these players. Maybe a little bit surprising that Rory isn't in the top 10. He's getting hurt by the fact that he has never played this course, so in theory, we don't know if he's going to like it or not. He's also getting hurt by the fact that his projected ownership is second to Scotty, and it's pretty high. Just to make the calculations work, I have to put a value in here, even though it shows blank. I do put a value in here, and I arbitrarily set it high because we don't know for sure he's going to like that course. So he's getting hurt by those 2 factors for sure. Hey, good evening, Phil. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. It's good to see you this evening. Again, I will have to give you the credit, as I did Monday, that you really brought Mackenzie Hughes to my attention starting Sunday. And we're going to talk about Mackenzie Hughes a lot tonight. Might be a good time to smash JJ Spawn. We'll get into that. We'll see. But, that's actually a pretty good segue. Let's sort on the price board, figure out where our fellow contestants seem to be going, and then how we can maneuver around where all of the ownership seems to be coalescing. So good segue there. In the 5 digits, in the 10Ks, we have 2 players, and no surprise as it's the 2 big names this week, and it's the crux of the poll question this week. Or at least this evening, with 2 big guns, the 2 players that are arguably the 2 best players in the world right now. Scotty at 12-7, Rory at 11-7. Spawn down low trying to play his way onto the Ryder Cup squad. He's been playing well for sure this so far in 2025, and it started really in the fall of 2024. But in the 10Ks, we have these 2 players. And all week it has felt like Scotty versus Rory. It has. I don't know if you all feel the same. It has for me. And I made a slight joke about this in my write-up over on Gabe's social media page. But to me, you're splitting hairs here. Yes, Scotty has been very, very good around here. He rates out much higher just because Rory's got a arbitrarily higher number in previous performance because he's never played here. But to me, you're splitting hairs between these 2 players. Scotty hasn't been good on par 3s yet this year. Rory's total procs hasn't been great this year. But otherwise, clearly the best 2 players, as you can see from Fantasy National. So this is probably going to be a surprise, and I'll probably get a whole lot of grief for this. But I'm going to play neither one of them. I'm out. I'm out on both of them. And it has nothing to do with the players themselves. You're asking me to split hairs between Scotty and Rory, and unfortunately, I mean, I'll try to turn the camera back on. Like, you're asking me to split hairs. I don't have any hair already, so there's nothing to split there for me. as the camera freezes at an opportune time, I'd be pulling my hair out trying to distinguish between these two players. I would. It would be an agonizing thing. So, because of that and their ownership, which I really think Scotty's going to be closer to 40%. I think Rory will be closer to 30%. I would be hard pressed to believe that 75% or less than 75% of the general public doesn't play one of these two players. Because of that, I'm just going to gain a whole lot of leverage. It is a big, big gamble, considering these two are clearly the best two in the field. Name recognition, how they're playing right now, etc. But I'm just out. If I can't differentiate between the two, I'm just gonna avoid them both. It helps that they're so highly owned. If this were the Masters per se, and Scotty was more like 20 to 25, and the second best was 16 to 18, it'd be a little bit different because not everybody's playing these two players. But I fully expect that majority, like I said, 75% of our fellow contestants will have one of these two. I like enough players elsewhere in the field that I don't have to come up here. So that is my bold thing for this week, is that I'm out on both. I'm not going to play a single Scotty. I'm not going to play a single Rory, because I think they have to top 5 for them to be worth the price and the ownership. They very well could, obviously. But I think that's just too much of a gamble for me. And a lot of it's based on the ownership. So that probably tells you the lineups I'm building. But in the 10Ks, I'm out. I'm just out. If I'm splitting hairs here, and if I had to choose one, I would go with Scotty, just because I know he likes the course. But, my answer to the poll question right now, I'd probably take Rory, and it seems like the majority of the viewers right now are in agreement that Rory is the best player in the world, right this second. But I think I would lean Scotty, but I'm out on both. So moving to the 9s, I like JJ Spawn a lot. He seems to be quite the pivot off of Aaron Rai. Now, Spawn hasn't had as much success around Memorial Park, but it is hard to deny what kind of form he's in. He's number 1 in irons in this field. The around the green's been solid, top 10 in good drives gained and bogey avoidance. Spawn's been playing great. I'm going to have quite a bit of JJ Spawn. I don't know if I would quote smash JJ Spawn, hammer him in every single lineup or in as many as I can fit, because I do like a lot of players in here in the 9Ks. But I am definitely going to have my fair share of him. I'll be overweight on the 12.5%. I wish I could give you an exact percentage, but I'm going to have a decent amount. But I'm not going to be, 80% or 70%. He's not part of my core. I'm just going to use him. Instead, my core, I talked about him all week. I've just had a hunch on Minwoo Lee, and it seems that everybody's got that hunch, or everyone's starting to feel that way, which really sucks, because I think this is a really good fit for Minwoo Lee. He falls in the rankings again because of, like Rory, he has never played here, so we don't know if he'll truly acclimate to the course. He's getting a lot of ownership, but Minwoo Lee's been really good around the green. We all know about his distance, 6th off the tee, especially on long courses, 1st in driving distance on long courses. The scary thing is the irons. His irons have not been good. He's not generally a good iron player. and you can see that by procs and total procs. I don't know. This is a gut feeling. He plays these long par fives well. He's a very good 3-putt avoider. So Minwoo is actually my core. Even though he is chalky, he is my core up here in the 9s. I like Aaron Rai. He's getting hurt because he is so popular. He also didn't rate out the best per Fantasy National, but it's hard to ignore how much success he's had around here. He's not really known for around the green. You're not playing Aaron Rai for his around the green. You're playing him for the irons. You're playing him for the precision. He's actually pretty good. Poa Trivialis putter. I wouldn't worry about the birdies gained. Like he's a grinder. He's gonna get his pars. He lacks a little bit of distance, but there's nothing wrong with Aaron Rai. He's just a little bit too popular for my liking, considering he's third behind Scotty and Rory. So I'll probably be underweight on Aaron Rai, but I do like the player this week. Davis Thompson's fine. I like Davis Thompson. Talking about how important around the green is. Top 20 in this field. He gets birdies when it's difficult. Third in these par fives. I like Davis Thompson a lot. I'll be using some Davis Thompson. Both of these two, even though they are big names, I'm going to have once. Tony Finau loves Memorial Park, but, my goodness, he has been pretty bad lately, all things considered. Like, you think about Tony Finau, the things that should come to mind, Minwoo doesn't do anything after the second round. He very well might not, but I don't know. Like I said, Minwoo is somebody I've targeted all week. I just think this is a good spot for him. It's a gut feeling thing. But coming back to Finau, like you think Tony Finau, you think distance, like long iron and iron play. Like look at his irons. His irons have been really bad in 2025. Lost 6.5 to players. He's lost more than he's gained. The putter's been hit and miss. It generally always is hit and miss, but like even around the green, like he's generally pretty good around the green. He's lost his past couple. And what I think is really telling for Tony Finau's generally never under field average in terms of distance. And he's been not once but twice already this year. And even when he's been positive in distance, it's not by a lot. 8, 5, 8. Whereas when he's in his prime, he's doubling that. 17, 13.5, 14. Like when he went on his big run of wins, Houston, he was 9. Rocket Mortgage is a little bit different, but like he was always really high in distance. So something's going on with Tony Finau. So I will play him once because he's had so much success here, but I don't want him any more than once. So no Minwoo for me. He's not burning my food. He might burn mine, but I'm planting my flag there, Rose. Wyndham Clark rated out really well. I've heard rumblings that he's not healthy. So that gives me a whole lot of pause. Obviously, I'm not in Wyndham Clark's camp. I'm not on site. I can't confirm that. I've just, heard rumblings, hearsay. So I will avoid Wyndham Clark on that. Injuries always give me pause. I'll probably squeeze J-Day in a lineup or two. His irons have been much better in 2025. He's always very good around the green. Very good short game. Generally keeps the ball in front of him. Good at avoiding bogeys. I'll use some J-Day. So in the 9Ks, I'm going to use a whole lot of Minwoo Lee. I'll be overweight on Minwoo Lee by a bunch. I know he's chalky, but that's my core play in the 9s. I like Aaron Rai. Ownership's pretty high. I'll probably limit my use of him. I am going to use quite a bit of JJ Spawn. My guess is, like 30 to 40%. I can't put an exact number on it, but I'll definitely be using some JJ Spawn. I'll be using some Davis Thompson. And then I'll have Sung Jae once. I'll have Finau once. I'll have Day a couple of times. Moving into the 8s. All three of the upper 8s rated out extremely well. They're all garnering roughly the same amount of ownership. They are, more unique than, say, the Wyndham Clark, the Jason Day, and the Tony Finau right above them. So I like the upper eights quite a bit. I'm going to use Siwoo, Stefan Jaeger. While I'm not picking him to win, just because he won last year doesn't mean he won't play well again this year. We've seen him in contention a couple of times. I really like Jaeger's game. I think it fits Memorial Park, evidenced by his win last year. So I'll be using Jaeger quite a bit. I am still a little bit concerned on Michael Kim. I've been off of him the past couple of weeks. I'm going to sprinkle some Michael Kim. Hard to ignore the fact that he is one of the hottest golfers on the planet. First around the green, seventh in irons, top 25 putter on this surface. So I'm going to use quite a bit of these three. I'll mix and match, but Jaeger is the core for me in this area. And Thomas Dietrich's fine as well. I don't mind Thomas Dietrich. You want to talk about a guy that's, elite off the tee, has plenty of distance, and he's really good on this surface. Second in Poa Trivialis. Now the worry with Dietrich is his irons, and particularly his long proximity, hasn't been great. But I will make sure I will roster a slight bit of Dietrich. He needs a top 20 to make Masters. I'm assuming that means Michael Kim, Phil. People are really sleeping on Griffin. Might be. But I'm assuming you mean Michael Kim here. Top 20 on the Masters. I don't know all the scenarios, so I'll take your word for it. But he's been playing extremely well lately. So, all of these players are extra motivated with the Masters in 2 weeks. Like, for anyone who doesn't know, the Masters cutoff is Houston. Anybody who's not already been invited to the Masters, anyone inside the top 50 OWGR will get an invite after Houston. So, a lot of these players are motivated, and then obviously the winner at the Valero next week, if not already invited, will have an invitation to the Masters. So, a lot on the line this week, really. Upper eights, I like all those players. I'm out on Pendrith. He's getting a little bit of love. I know Pendrith, the profile matches this course, but he struggles on driver-heavy courses. He hasn't been good around the green this year. Good drives game, long courses, not great. I don't know. I despite the fact that he's such a big hitter off the tee, I actually focus on Taylor Pendrith on short courses when the driver's out of his hands. Jacob Bridgman, third in my rankings. He's getting a lot of attention for decent reason, in my opinion. Coming off the really good Valspar, very good around the green, very good putter, profiles well for Memorial Park. I'll use some Jacob Bridgman as well. Really, all of these guys I like. You see, they're getting similar amount of ownership. I'll have McNeely a little bit. I'll have Smalley once, maybe. I like Grazerman. He's actually the most popular in the eights. So in the eights, I'm going to be mostly I'm in the upper eights most of the time. But don't get it wrong, don't mistake. I will have some Dietrich in the mid eights. I'll have some Bridgman. I'll drop into the low eights for a McNeely, for a Grazerman. I'll do Alex Smalley once. So I really like the eights. That tells you the kind of lineups I'm building. Moving to the upper sevens, you talked about Ben Griffin. He's played well here. He's got free wheel to hit the driver. My issue is he doesn't have a lot of distance. Like, if guys are going to be loose with the driver, they need to have some distance. And Ben Griffin doesn't have a lot of distance. Great putter, especially on this surface. Good around the green. I don't hate Ben Griffin, Phil, but it's not he wasn't my go-to in here. I don't hate him, but he wasn't my go-to. I do like the fact that he's pretty unique, or seemingly pretty unique. Like, most of the upper sevens are getting ignored except for Joe Highsmith, who I like. I like Joe Highsmith this week. I'll have him. But, I'm going to have really a little bit of everybody in here. I'll have some Ben Griffin. I'll have some Taylor Moore. I don't mind throwing Harris English into a lineup. He just keeps the ball in front of him. Hey, good evening, Ray. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. It's good to see you this evening. Who do you like better between Meisner or Fox? Meisner and Fox, or Novak and Phillips? Very good question. You're beating me to the punch, so I'll answer that when we get down to the sixes. But you're beating me to the punch there. But very good question. I like 3 of those 4 players, and the combination of the 2 will be pretty obvious. Does he have been told you about Bridgman? Yeah, I mean, again, great last week. I was a little late to the party on Bridgman. That's fine. But does he have good history? Does that mean Ben Griffin, Phil? If so, yes. He's been okay here. We'll go to Ben Griffin, 79. He's been okay. 36 in the 16th. It's not horrible, not fantastic, but not horrible. He also isn't the best when it's difficult. So, I don't know. It's somebody that I'll definitely use, but wasn't my first thought. But yeah, in the upper sevens, I'm going to just sprinkle a little bit of all these guys. Griffin, Moore, Highsmith, even Harris English. I'll even throw Kevin Yu into a lineup because of the narrative on the ball striking, and just pray to God he makes one putt during the week. But I mean, it's hard to argue with the ball striking, especially the off the tee for Kevin Yu on a course that should fit Kevin Yu, minus the putter. So I'll even throw Kevin Yu in the lineup. I'm just never a big Kitayama guy. It seems like the public is generally finally off of him. I know he rates out well. No thanks on Kitayama. Take a look at Davis Riley. He's getting some attention, though. So I don't love that, but he's played very, very well around Memorial Park. I don't hate Davis Riley. I really like Patrick Rogers as well. Around the green. His irons are much better than what has shown in 2025. So I don't hate Patrick Rogers. The 200 plus procs doesn't look great, but that's just from 2025. So I like Patrick Rogers, but the biggest core of my whole week revolves around 3 or 4 guys. I'm going to have Minwoo Lee a bunch. I'm going to have Stefan Jaeger a bunch. So if those guys don't play well, I'll lose. If Mackenzie Hughes doesn't play well, I will lose. I'm all about some Mackenzie Hughes. And again, Phil, I have to give you the credit for alerting me to or bringing to my attention Mackenzie Hughes this week. I know the irons are bad. He doesn't have a lot of prowess off the tee. Top 10 putter, top 25 and around the green. Avoids bogeys when it's difficult. You see the amount of success he's had around Memorial Park. He's never finished outside the top 30. Now that's a famous, I've just given him the announcer's jinx and all that crap, but he's never finished outside the top 30 at Memorial Park. I really like Mackenzie Hughes this week. So he's a big part of my core. Harry Hall's fine. I'll go back to the well with Nikolai Højgaard too. I know that burned me last week when I went back to the well with Seabez, but I am a big believer in talent. And Nikolai Højgaard's got some of the most raw talent in this field. Irons are good. 11th in par 3s, which should be extreme importance around Memorial Park. I think this fits a little bit better than the Valspar did, considering he can get a little loose with the driver, and you've got a little bit more room here at Memorial Park. I'm not in love with it, but I do want to give Nikolai Højgaard a little bit of love. I talked about Sam Ryder, how I'm not really on Sam Ryder, despite him being 10th. So I'm going to jump off the ship. To your question, Ray, one of my 4 core plays and one of the 3 players that you asked about, Andrew Novak's a big core for me this week, but I'm just not a big believer in Phillips. But I do really like Andrew Novak. I'm going to have a bajillion percentage of Andrew Novak. Top 15 around the green, top 5 in bogey avoidance, especially when it's difficult. Think about when Novak was popping earlier this year. Finished 3rd at the Farmers, a long, difficult course. Top 15 the Genesis, which again was played at Torrey. Long and difficult course. I really, really like Andrew Novak this week. From that standpoint, I agree with you on McKenzie, but other than that, I don't. Okay, that's fine. I'm a big believer in what he's already done at Memorial Park. The jury is still out in regards to how much previous performance indicates future success at the course. Like, we'll come up to Augusta in a couple of weeks. That is the most predictive course on the PGA Tour. If you've had success prior, generally indicates that you're going to have more success. The jury's still out on Memorial Park, considering it's only been seen 3 or 4 years, and this is only the 2nd year it's been played in the spring. But I'm choosing to believe that there's something about this course that he just likes. And with the extreme emphasis on around the green and putting, it's hard to argue Mackenzie Hughes or against Mackenzie Hughes in that regard. I had Novak last week. I'm off. Yeah, okay. I mean, like, Novak had a really bad week, but that was not a good fit for him. This is a good fit for Andrew Novak for the reasons I was talking about. Long, difficult course. The Valspar is not long. It's difficult, but it's not long. I really like Novak this week because you think about other long courses he's played. The Farmers, top 5. Genesis, top 15. Now, the Cognizant is short. Valspar, I mean, he still even made the cut. But look, we've talked about around the green all week. Look at his form around the green in 2025. He's only had 1 tournament where he was below field average around the green. And the off the tee is in good form right now, too. He's hit and miss with the putter, but you can always argue that guys, have good weeks and bad weeks with the putter. So I like this a lot for Novak, and look where he plays his best. Plays his best when it's difficult, plays his best in the wind. I think a lot of things line up for Novak this week. So sounds like we're at odds in that regard, Rose. Is what it is. I am going to play a whole lot of Novak. And if he doesn't play well, you can come back next week and chat and tell me that I'm an idiot. It wouldn't be the first time that it's deserved. But at the same time, if he does play well, I'm gonna gloat a little bit and say Novak was a good choice. Yeah, it's not scoring enough. I don't think he'll have to do much this week. And look, birdies gained, especially when it's difficult, he's good. It's not fantastic. It's not elite, but I think it's good enough. He's been very good with the long irons as well, which you need around Houston. Again, I just think this is a good fit for Novak because he's not putting. That's fair. He's supposedly decent on this surface, but we just saw, he's lost strokes 3 of the last 4 tournaments. So if that's your reason, I don't blame it. I don't blame you, not one bit. Lee Hodges didn't rate out well. He hasn't played particularly well here. He keeps the ball in front of him, and he's generally a pretty good par 3 performer, Phil. But he hasn't been so far in 2025. Now, he's been very good at these, mid to longer par 4s. I can understand the reasoning behind it. I don't like his form right now. But Lee Hodges is somebody you always think about when you're playing a par 70. because he generally doesn't do well with par fives. Like I said, he's generally better on par threes and fours. But also remember, this is not a traditional par 70. There are still 3 par fives around Memorial Park. So I'm just not there with Hodges. Going into the lower sevens, I would not ignore Nicholas Norgard. A huge hitter off the tee. Sometimes he doesn't keep it on the same planet. But, with how forgiving Houston is off the tee, not necessarily fairways, but not a whole lot of rough, or at least thick rough. Whatever trees there are pushed back away from the fairways. I would not ignore Nicholas Norgard. Give a casual mention to these two, Victor Perry and Nick Dunlap. Perry and Dunlap both have been pretty good with the irons. Victor Perry is a much better around the green player than what is shown in 2025. I like Victor Perry quite a bit. I'll be high on Victor Perry. And for you, P, mentioned earlier in the show, I'd mentioned one of your guys. I actually don't hate Doug Gim this week. Much like everything with Doug Gim, it comes to the putter. He's not an abject failure on this surface. He hasn't had the best course value, but anytime you're talking about long iron play being important, you always have to take at least a casual look at Doug Gim. So I will throw him in a lineup, but I'm not gonna go overboard with it. But I will play Doug Gim. I do want to also mention Johnny Vegas, elite driver of the golf ball. Much like Doug Gim, it comes down to the putter. But I do want to casually mention Johnny Vegas as well. For you, Ray, I have 2 6K plays for you all. Because I'm not playing Scotty or Rory, I'm not coming down to the 6Ks. But if I were going to, 2 6Ks. Mac Meisner and Ryan Fox. So you beat me to the punch there, Ray, on that one. I do like both of these players. If I had to choose one, I would go with Ryan Fox. But Meisner's been really good so far in 2025. Top 30 irons in this field. Top 15 around the green. But I do think this is a good fit for Ryan Fox. He hits it a mile off the tee. You can see that? Oh, sorry. No, you can't. It's just off the screen. Pretty good with distance. We've talked about these distance guys that can get a little loose with it. I think this fits Ryan Fox quite a bit. But I do like both of these players if you're coming down to the 6Ks. I'm just not doing it much or at all, really. So these are the 2 6K plays I have for you all. So hopefully that answers your question, Ray. If you're between those or that specific grouping of players, I would take Meisner and Fox. But I'm actually highest on Andrew Novak of all of those 4 players that you mentioned. All right, let's start making some lineups and figure out where, how we're going to maneuver around all this chalk. Let's do tiers contest very quickly. Tier 1, Scotty, Rory, and Spawn. Despite the fact that Spawn's going to be so unique in that tier, I still think you got to take Scotty. I think I prefer Scotty over Rory. If you want to get extra unique, it might be JJ Spawn, but I don't think I've got the stones to do that in a tiers contest when options are limited. So in tier 1, I would take Scotty. Tier 2, Rai, Minwoo, Davis Thompson, Sung Jae, and Wyndham Clark. I will take Minwoo Lee. I think it's a pretty solid tier otherwise. I think Aaron Rai is going to be clearly the most owned in that tier. So I'm hoping to get some uniqueness with Minwoo Lee. I also don't hate Davis Thompson. So I'll take Minwoo in a close battle in tier 2. Tier 3 is Finau, J-Day, Siwoo, Jaeger, and Dietrich. Another tier that I really, really like. Basically all of these guys with the exception of maybe Finau. Give me Jaeger. He's just part of my core. Siwoo could be quite interesting. J-Day could be quite interesting. Just give me Jaeger. I'm the highest on him. Tier 4, Michael Kim, Pendrith, Bridgman, McNeely, Smalley, Grazerman, and Tagala. Again, another tier where you got lots of options. I'll probably go Jacob Bridgman. Really, it's anybody but Pendrith and Tagala for me. So, I mean, if you have a strong feeling on Grazerman, if you have a strong feeling on McNeely, I'm fine with it. I would lean Bridgman, and then probably McNeely would be my 2. Tier 5, Keith Mitchell, Ben Griffin, Taylor Moore, Joe Highsmith, Harris English, Kevin Yu, and Jake Knapp. This might be a Ben Griffin tier for me, because I think Joe Highsmith's going to be overwhelmingly popular in this tier. So give me Ben Griffin. I also don't hate Taylor Moore, but give me Ben Griffin in tier 5. Lastly, tier 6, we got Nick Dunlap, Matty Schmid, Thorbjorn Olesen, Isaiah Salinda, Matt McCarty, Eric Cole, Jesper Svensson. Not in love with this tier. I'll probably just go Nick Dunlap because he rated out the best and also finished top 15 here last year. A lot of people have talked about Isaiah Salinda this week. He didn't rate out the best for me, but I'm talking a lot of people like Salinda this week, so I'll tell you, Gabe is really high on McCarty. So I'll take Dunlap, but I'm not in love with much in that tier. Okay. Oh, sorry. Recap. This tier's construction goes Scotty in tier 1, Minwoo Lee tier 2, Yeager tier 3, Bridgman tier 4, Ben Griffin tier 5, Nick Dunlap tier 6. All right, let's start making some lineups, figure out where or how our fellow contestants are building theirs, and then how we can maneuver around them. Clearly, it's Scotty. He's the most projected owned player. I highly doubt they're able to go Scotty Rory. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to hammer like 2 or 3 6Ks. I don't think they're doing that. But to fit Scotty in a non-5K contest, you see no one's really coming below 64, 65. You've got a 4% Danny Walker, 5% Alejandro Tosti, 5.5 Pot Geeter. I would stay away from Pot Geeter completely. Like, this guy hits it miles off the tee, sure, but his around the green game is awful. It's atrocious. So I would stay away from Pot Geeter. He also seems like he's going to be pretty chalky in that tier. In the 6Ks. You've got Steven Fisk, 5%, 6,900. But really, it's Davis Riley at 10%, and then everything else is kind of scattered, really. So we'll use Steven Fisk for the chalky lineup with Scotty. I know that's going to deflate some of this total ownership. I'm just trying to use the most chalky plays in the area. Am I worried with Dunlap's driver? Thinking about him as my last guy in. Yes, to a little bit of an extent. The only saving grace, Kyle. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated, Kyle. It's good to see you this evening. The only saving grace with Dunlap specifically is that Memorial Park is pretty forgiving. There's not a whole lot of trouble off the tee. The rough is only like 1.25 inches thick. There's no real water hazards off the tee. There's no fairway bunkers off the tee. It's pretty open. Dunlap's been a very good par 3 performer so far this year, which you're going to have to be around Memorial Park. Yes, I am slightly worried with the driver, but I think this course is forgiving enough that I don't think it's going to be the biggest issue, is how I would phrase that. Tell Gabe you have to spot to the players before they start playing good. He's late on McCarty. I took McCarty in a lot of year-long things just because his win in the fall put him into a lot of events. I haven't been too impressed with McCarty so far in 2025. But, I mean, I was pretty high on him after his win in the fall. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with McCarty this week, is how I'd phrase it. Let's try to finish up a couple of these chalky lineups. That way we can get into how I'm building my lineups and then, of course, the pick selection. So, again, Stephen Fisk, not the most popular player overall, but chalky for the area. And this leaves them 7,600 per player. Again, it doesn't look like the low sevens are getting much in terms of play. 6%, 7% Højgaard maybe. Like this total ownership is going to be quite deflated, but it highlights the issue or difficulty with building Scotty lineups this week with no 5Ks. You have to go Scotty into the 8s basically. So this would be like Grazerman more than likely, Highsmith, Davis Riley. Let's go Highsmith, 71. Well, we'll drop off of Riley, 73. Sam Ryder might get some looks after a couple of really good weeks. Lee Hodges maybe at 5.5. Novak, but this is the challenge with building these Scotty lineups. We'll say Lee Hodges, if I could type. That's the challenge with building these Scotty lineups. This, even though it's well within our target area of 80% or under, I think this is going to be a fairly chalky Scotty build, unless Gabe is wildly off with some of these ownerships. Paul Geeter might be somebody else that they would consider. Like if they go double six with Scotty, Beater, Stephen Fisk, this frees them up a little bit more. You could go up again. This might be Grazerman. I doubt they can go Jaeger. Maybe they can. Like if we go Grazerman, this would be the Joe Highsmith and Davis Riley. That seems to be getting some attention. Maybe they are doing a double six. The two chalky double sixes seem to be Fisk and Potgieter. It looks like the more total ownership would be Rory. So it looks like Rory, they might be able to squeeze in a 9, like a Tony, maybe. Still probably using A6K like a Fisk or a Potgieter. I'm just using Fisk because it's easier to type. And then, again, the same kind of players, Highsmith, Riley, things of that nature. Nikolai Højgaard. Who was the 73 that we use? Hodges. We'll use Sam Ryder. He might get a little bit of attention. 75. I mean, Davis Riley, 76. It's even 100 over. Yeah, I don't know. This is difficult. All of this ownership is coalesced right into here, right in the 8s and the 9s. So, really, I mean, is an Aaron Rye lineup the most popular? Aaron Rye, come down to Finau. Yeah, this seems much more in line. Like Grazerman, yeah. Highsmith, Riley. Yeah, okay. So if you wanted the highest total cumulative ownership, it looks something like this, more than likely. I don't know how popular that would be. Again, I think 75% of our fellow contestants are going to use Scotty or Rory. So how are we going to combat that? Well, I'm going to use Scotty just because he's the most owned player if you're higher on Scotty, and of course substitute this if you're on Rory. But I gave you a couple players in the 6s to get off some of this perceived chalk, and it was Ray that mentioned them. I like both Mac Meisner and Ryan Fox. I think I like Ryan Fox just a tad bit more, but there's nothing wrong with either one of them. I like both of them. So I'm going to use Fox in this example. Still going to be difficult to use much in the upper eights. Like if you're not afraid to do double sixes, then maybe you can come up into the upper eights for like a Jaeger, who I'm really high on. But otherwise, you might be looking at like a Jacob Bridgman or a Mav McNeely. Not necessarily as high on Alex Smalley. You've mentioned Ben Griffin. If you're not afraid to drop from Scotty all the way down into the sevens, like you can hammer this upper sevens area. But you can probably go ahead and do that with a Bridgman as well. Like Bridgman hit Ben Griffin 72. There's several players that I like in the low sevens, like Ricky Castillo. You can take a look at, I mentioned Victor Perry and Nick Dunlap, Johnny Vegas, Doug Gim. You know, you got a lot of options here. Let's just throw Doug Gim into this for peace sake. So that would be one way to build a Scotty lineup that I think you'll be somewhat unique based on these specific players, Meisner and Fox, as opposed to Polkgeter and Fisk. A little bit of a chance here with Doug Gim, considering the putter is really, really bad. But anytime you're talking about long irons, you at least got to think about it. Chat seems to be really high on Ben Griffin. I'm not as high on Ben Griffin, but I can get there. I don't hate it at all, especially at 8%. But the way I've been going about my lineups mostly this week, again, I'm out on both 10Ks. I've been starting most of my lineups with Minwoo. I mentioned how he's the core in the nines for me, but I'll use Spawn. I'll use Rye. I'll use Davis Thompson. I don't hate using both of them. Like, we can go JJ Spawn and Minwoo. It forces us to come down more into the lower sevens because I'm extremely high on Stefan Jaeger, and I don't think you're able to do a lot going these three. So that's why I'm a little bit more cautious on going like Spawn Jaeger or Spawn Minwoo. I would do like Spawn Jaeger. But again, most of my lineups have been Minwoo, and I'm just coming down to Jaeger, and I've been saving a whole lot of money trying to get quite unique here because I'll use Mackenzie Hughes. I'm just extremely high on Mac Hughes. In the lowest of low sevens, again, Victor Perry, Nick Dunlap. I'll throw Johnny Vegas into one. You know, I might get real unique, leave upwards of 7, 8, maybe even 1,000 on the table. Might use a Ryan Fox or a Mac Meisner. I'll throw Nick Dunlap into this. There was a question about him, who I don't hate. And you know, you got this whole area here that you can play around with. Again, I would use Højgaard. Fisk seems like he's going to be popular for the 6Ks, Phil. He is at 5.5%. I know that doesn't sound like much, but you look at the other players in the 6Ks, you know, 4.5 from Ryan Fox. Polkgeter is 5.5 as well. Fisk looks like he's going to be the popular choice, so I'd be a little wary of that. That's why I gave you the names Meisner and Fox. You know, whether you want to balance this out and go like a Ben Griffin and Joe Highsmith or Taylor Moore maybe, or you can get, you know, build it slightly more of the higher end like Michael Kim, and then 83 is Mav McNeely. Like, you have a lot of wiggle room here if you go Minwoo or Spawn or, you know, take your choice in the nines. I've had several lineups where McKenzie's my last player in the lineup, and I've been hammering more of the mid to upper sevens, like Patrick Rogers, who I really like this week, would be in here. Ben Griffin. I'll throw Harris English into a lineup if I could type. And then 87 again is Michael Kim. I'm not necessarily the highest on Kim. Nothing wrong with Dietrich. You can throw Dietrich into this. I would do Jacob Bridgman just because he's third in my rankings. These are the kind of lineups that I've been building. Starting with Minwoo or Spawn, even a little bit of Rye, Davis Thompson. And I have no problem doing, a Spawn, Minwoo, maybe not necessarily Jaeger, even though I'm highest on Jaeger, and then maybe drop down to Mav McNeely, and then just playing around in here and mixing and matching an upper, a mid, and a low 7. The mid 7 generally is Mackenzie Hughes. Like in that last lineup, we can try it. I don't know if it'll quite work, but I'm so high on Andrew Novak. Yeah, this is going to be a little bit too much with Spawn, Minwoo, and Jaeger. So instead of Dunlap, I would normally go Andrew Novak, but whoopsie. Hughes. There we go. These are my 4 core. In some way, form, or... Gosh dang it. There. These are my 4 core players this week. Now, that's not to say that they're going to be in every, 100% of my lineups, but I'm going to tell you right now, Jaeger is probably in 80%. Hughes is probably in 90%. Novak will probably be like 60 to 70% of my lineups. I've got a core at most areas of the price board. And then I've been mixing and matching. Like, for example, I could easily do like a Rory. No, I couldn't. I lied. I lied to you. I'm a filthy liar. You might be able to do like a JJ Spawn. 69's like Ryan Fox or Mav McNeely. Or Mav McNeely, gosh dang it, Mac Meisner. Like, you could do that. If that's the way you're feeling. But these are my 4 core plays for the week. If these 4 players do not play well, I will lose. And I will lose my ass. Full fading Scotty, full fading Rory, because they're so highly owned. I'm just going with these 4 guys and literally mixing and matching with a lot in the 8s and the 7s with them. All right, we're a little bit over on time, so let me get to the picks for Houston this week. Our Houston selections. Again, credit to Phil for alerting me. I'm going to go with Mackenzie Hughes. I really like what I've seen as I've researched Mackenzie Hughes this week. Gabe's going to go with Mav McNeely. My favorite play, if we're not talking Mackenzie Hughes since he's unique and mid-priced, favorite play is Andrew Novak. I'm going to go with Andrew Novak as my favorite play. A mid-7 and a low 7 gives you a lot of maneuverability in your lineups. My favorite play is Andrew Novak. Gabe's going to go with favorite play of Siwoo Kim. Makes a lot of sense. He rated 5th in my rankings. Siwoo seems to be a slight pivot off of J-Day and Wyndham Clark and Tony Finau, so I don't hate that at all. I'll be using some Siwoo Kim as well this week. Fades. Gabe and I are on the same wavelength here. He only mentioned Rory as his fade. Again, I'm going to be bold. I'm going to fade Scotty and Rory. I just think they have to top 5 to make it worthwhile for their price and their ownership. I'll just take a chance on other guys. I just will. Because if they fall outside the top 20, I'm in a really, really good spot this week. But Mad Scientist play. I'm going to say Ryan Fox. There's several options here. Ryan Fox at 6,900. Mac Meisner at 6,900. Victor Paris could very well be a Mad Scientist play. You could argue Mackenzie Hughes is a Mad Scientist play, considering he's hovering at 5 to 6%. I'm just going to go with Ryan Fox as my choice since he's in the 6Ks. Gabe's going to go with Matt McCarty. I don't know if I'm necessarily there at 7,000. He rated outside the top 100 for me, but elite putter and a course that emphasizes putting. Yeah, I can understand it. I just don't think I'm in agreement with Gabe on that one. But he's going to go McCarty. Fear of missing out our FOMO. I'm going to play Højgaard again. I don't love it, but I do think this is a good fit for Nikolai Højgaard. Much more than the Valspar was. I was willing to take a chance on the at the Valspar. And I think Memorial Park's much better suited for him. Gabe's going to go with Grazerman. Gabe mentioned in his write-up that's over on his social media page that he wasn't necessarily high on Grazerman, but he's heard Grazerman a lot. So that he's going to incorporate Grazerman in some of his lineups because of that. And our wild card category, we went with Top Texan, since this is the Texas swing. 2 events before the Masters. Not necessarily native-born Texan, but has Texas ties. So Gabe's going to go with Mac Meisner, who we've talked about quite a bit. I'm going to go with Johnny Vegas. I think this could be interesting for Johnny Vegas. It all depends on the putter, but Johnny Vegas makes, I think it's Houston or is it Dallas? He makes one of those 2 major metropolitan areas his home now, even though he's a native, Colombian? Venezuelan? He's a native South American, but lives in Texas now. So my top Texan is Johnny Vegas. We're both staying away, Gabe and I, both staying away from Scotty in that regard. That's going to be it for the show this evening. I've got a lot of people to thank. Rose, P, Phil, Ray, and Kyle for jumping into the chat. It is very, very much appreciated. I always enjoy it. I always enjoy interacting with you all. Great questions this evening. My answer to the poll question, I think I'm going to go with Rory. Who's the best player in the world right this second? I think it's Rory. Thanks to all of you who jumped into chat and participated this evening. I always have a lot of fun with that. Very much appreciated. And thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Again, go check out Gabe's social media page. His handle is right there on your screen. That's where our detailed write-ups for our picks are posted every week. And make sure you're subscribing to his article. For all of the wagers you have made this week for the Houston Open, for all the DFS contests you play this week for the Houston Open, for this week and weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.